Ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to be able to give you this overview of ND filters. I have a lot of brand new photography students, and as they advance and progress, they start getting into landscape shooting in certain situations where they need to reduce the amount of light coming in. Oftentimes, we're trying to get more light. There are many situations you want to reduce the amount of light coming into your camera, and this is most easily solved according to the applications that we'll be discussing with an ND filter. ND stands for neutral density. It's sort of like sunglasses for your lenses. There are several different ND ratings, qualities, there's types, there's a bunch of information that you should know. This is going to be a pretty long video, but we're going to list a table of contents. So if there's a specific question that you have, we probably have it answered. I'm going to try to stick to ND filters mainly, but this video is designed to save you money and to give you an idea of what performance of your filters you are looking for. It will shock you to know that the vast majority of ND filters out there, by and large, I have tested them, are not very good, and there's a handful of very good ones. I have spent thousands of dollars on different kinds of ND filters only, and I'm going to save you a lot of time and money if you just listen to what I'm about to tell you. So one question you probably have is why and in what situations would you want to reduce the amount of light coming into your camera? 4 reasons off the top of my mind are landscape photography. If you're doing a very wide shot and maybe you want to bring the brightness of the sky down, that would be a perfect time for a certain type of ND filter, and I cover that, how to do that, on my crash courses. Video shooting with wide aperture lenses outside is another application if you want to shoot, at 2.8 or even wider, during the day when it's very bright, way too much light coming into the camera. We're kind of locked into our shutter speed. We can't really turn our ISO down further, and that is a problem. You can't really solve it without an ND filter. Many high-end video cameras have ND filters built into them. We also have applications for strobe use. Again, if you're trying to go with a very, very wide aperture on a sunny day, well, cameras have sync speed limits, which means you can't really use a super fast shutter speed. And so one of the best ways to manage that is to lower the amount of light coming into the camera through an ND filter. And the 4th example I can think of is long exposure shots. Like if you're shooting a river or a stream or a waterfall and you want to get that misty look, ND filters are a spectacular way to go. However, there is some really confusing nomenclature in terms of what the grade of ND filter you have, how dark is it going to get? And the problem with this is these nomenclatures are used interchangeably. So let's just dive into the chart. A stop is an arbitrary amount of light. So 1 stop more than before would be twice as bright. So this is something that I discuss on my exposure lessons. If you have a shutter speed that's twice as long as the one before, you're letting in twice the amount of light. That is 1 stop. ND filters are rated in the amount of light that they reduce coming into the lens. So if we say this is an ND filter with 1 stop intensity, that means it would let in half the amount of light as it did before. And this is how ND filters are rated. So they have different intensities from 1 to 9 or 10,000, but there's only a few of them that you really need to worry about. And I'm going to point those out here. So let's just make a list. 1 stop, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10 stops. So when you go to purchase an ND filter, oftentimes it is going to have an ND number that would say something like ND2, ND4, ND8, ND16. What is that referring to? Now, the easiest way to keep track of this is to think of it in terms of fractions. So if you have an ND filter with a strength or intensity of 2, all you need to do is turn it into a fraction by putting a 1 above it. So an ND filter of 2 is going to let in half the amount of light. An ND filter of 4 is going to let in a quarter amount of light, and so on and so forth. 1/8. So if it's a 3-stop reduction, it's going to let in 1/8. If it's a 4-stop reduction, so if it's an ND16, it's going to let in 1/16. If it's an ND filter that reduces it by 5 stops, that would be an ND32. And that's going to let in a fraction of 1, and so on and so forth. The most useful ND filters, in my opinion, are 3 stops and 6 stops, occasionally with a 10-stop filter. And just me, I like Grad filters in the 4-stop range that I'll explain later. Now, having said all that, there is another set of nomenclatures that you're going to see. It is the decimal. It doesn't make much sense, but you'll see a single stop designated with 0.3. So if you were to buy a 1-stop ND filter, you may sometimes see it described as a 0.3 or a 0.9 or a 1.5 or whatever it is. But the reason why I went through all that is to arm you with the knowledge that when you go out to buy these filters, you know what you're going to get. Having said that, there are also different kinds of filters. For example, we have a full ND filter. This is all the way through. It's a plastic Cokin. And then we have something referred to as gradient ND filters. And I use these a lot on my videos when I'm shooting landscapes. Essentially what I'm doing is I lower this down to where the horizon is, and so I can lower the exposure of the sky and bring it kind of closer to the exposure of the foreground. So you're going to notice that these are square, which doesn't really match the shape of a lens. And then we also have very popular, very common are the constructed ND filters. So this is a Tiffin filter. It's a 77 millimeter. It's brand new. I've never used it. And so that would thread in to my lens filter. In order to figure out what your lens filter thread is, all you need to do is to look on the back side of your cap. Almost every single camera lens out there with a cap will designate. So this has a filter thread size of 58. So that cap came from a Fuji 18 to 55 millimeter lens. It's the kit lens for Fuji, just to demonstrate this. And so if I had, for example, a 58 millimeter thread, I would take that filter and thread it into the camera, and that's how it would work. Having said that, I do not recommend these for beginning photographers, and there's a reason. And I've made the mistake of going out and purchasing a filter, ND filter, for every single one of my lenses, and it was very expensive. If you are just starting and beginning, what I would recommend is start with the square ones, because you can put a square filter on any lens, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So now that we know the size of the lens that we want, you can buy a kit. I'm going to have some on my website. You can also find them on Amazon. That basically comes with a bunch of these filter adapters. So all different numbers. You can buy these separately. The kit runs like $26 or something like that, and it comes with the holder I'll show in a second. But the reason why you want to buy these is because you'll notice that there's numbers on here. There's a 52, here's a 62, here's a 48. And you'll notice the opening is different on each of them. See that? Different sizes. What this is going to allow us to do is to take these threads and screw them into our camera, just like this. So I have a 58 size adapter, and it puts this kind of flat flange ring on it. So why would I want to do that? Well, this is referred to as a P-Cokin filter holder that is compatible with this set. So there's a little lip here. It's kind of hard to see. It's around the edge right here. And this is going to allow me to secure it to the camera. I'm going to demonstrate that in a second. But I also wanted to show you from this view, you'll notice that we have 3 grooves here, 3 slots. Those will allow us to put 3 of these guys, up to 3 of these guys, in these slots. And I'll demonstrate this on the crash course for landscape shooting. So let me show you how this works so it's crystal clear. All I'm doing is I'm taking that and clipping it in like that. So now I have a secure way to hang square filters in front of my lens. And so if I wanted to reduce the exposure by 3 stops, this is a 0.9 filter, which is an ND8. You can take that, put it in here, and there I go. So now I have just added a filter in front of my camera lens. And that's the idea of the square filters. So this particular set is referred to as a Cokin P size. In millimeters, when you go to purchase the filters, it's 84 by 84 millimeters. There is a larger set that the high-end shooters use, which is referred to as the Z Pro size. It's bigger. In this size, you'll notice the filter is larger as well. So if we were to measure this, we would see that it is 10 centimeters, which is 100 millimeters. So the Z Pro is 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters. And again, it's the same concept. The rings are a little bit bigger, but you screw this into your lens, and then you can take this and you can clip it in. It has these stoppers to prevent it from moving. So once it's locked in, it's not going anywhere. And then you would take the filters and drop them in. Now, the reason why you would want to go with the Z Pro is because it's larger. And when you are using wider apertures, like 24 millimeters or wider, The P series starts to get vignetting on the sides. You'll see it in your image. So the recommendation that I make to beginning photographers is that you don't know how serious you're going to be about the landscape shooting. And there are kits that you can buy like this. Again, 27 bucks. It's going to have all the ring adapters. It's going to have the filter holder. This one even has filters in here. Look at this. I've never used them. They're plastic, not the greatest quality, but they will allow you to get started and at least try it out. And if you know you like it, you can still use the ring adapters for the very nice filters. You don't have to spend a lot of money on these adapters. So I still use these cheapy ones that I bought. The Z Pro, this size, you're still going to get vignetting when you get to very wide focal lengths, like 15, 13 millimeters. You're still going to get it. So just know that that's just part of the territory. So I hope that's crystal clear. You can buy one filter with an adapter kit and use it on all your lenses. That's far more affordable than purchasing a ton of these for each and every lens. When you begin to specialize and become very, very good at shooting one type of subject matter, like let's say a portrait photographer, and you have your go-to portrait lens, then it makes sense to invest in a high-end quality filter. You'll also notice that we have some of these filters. Here's a Z Pro. It's 150 millimeters by 150. That gives you some more play to move it up and down. Something else I want to point out is that the Cokin filter holder has a polarizing lens that you can get that slips in right close to the filter. It's kind of a trick to get it in there. But once it's in there, you can have a polarizer that you can rotate here, and then you can put multiple filters on top of it. You can definitely stack filters. I use this one a lot because it's small, it's light, it's cheap. I even use this with the very high-end filters, some of which I'm about to show you. This is my filter bag. It is made by Think Tank. And then I have a Maven strap. This is a strap that I sell. It's a skinny strap, braided. And I use this as a backup strap if there's a problem. And I put a carabiner on it to anchor down to my camera stand or my backpack. If I need to, if it starts getting windy, I'll take this off and clip it into the camera stand and use it to anchor from being blown over. One of the truths is there are tons of filters out there and they are not all the same quality. I have spent $400 on a kit for a Z Pro kit. It was like a Cokin series kit. I spent $400 on it for some plastic filters. I was very disappointed. And there are a lot of filters out there that are made of poor quality. They don't have great character and you're just literally wasting your money. So I want to point out a couple things. Let me show you 3 different filters that are going to appear to be the same that are not. This is a 3-stop plastic Cokin filter. This is a 3-stop glass filter. I don't remember who made that one. And this is a brand new nano-coated filter. These are amazing. Here's a plastic Grad. So plastic, glass, nano-coated. They all have their positives and negatives. Typically the plastic are cheaper, which is great. The negative on these is usually they have color cast and they scratch easily. So if you buy one of those cheapy kits, they'll come with some plastic ones. I think those are fine to get started. Just know if you do this a lot and you scratch them, you're gonna eventually want to get them replaced. Plain glass ND filters are great because they don't scratch as easily. They're easier to clean and they're wonderful. However, there's often reflective and color cast. Most filters are going to have lens flares or reflection problems. The nano-coated ones are the best, in my opinion, because of the way that they're designed is to minimize and reduce how much dirt can stick to them. That's really what you're getting with nano. Lens flare and reflectance, a lot of it comes down to your lens. You can't put a good filter on a bad lens and expect for it to resolve the lens flare problems. And stacking filters is also going to create lens flare problems as well. But I want to show you something really cool about nano filters. It's a Sharpie pen. So I can write on this filter with a Sharpie pen. I don't want that to stay there because see it's already smudging, right? So if I let it dry, it would be a nightmare. And you can barely see it on this guy, but it wrote up here on the corner. Can you see that? So it's basically ruining my filter here. Let's see if I can get it clean. There it is. So I want to show you something pretty crazy. If you have a true nano-coated filter, you can take a Sharpie and write on it, and the ink will bead up. It's very difficult to see, but I can see the very fine particles beading here. Hydrophobic surface, it will not allow the ink to stick to it. So if you get very serious about it and you're going to notice that there's this purple color to it, that's the nano coating. These are the best, in my opinion. So real quick, I want to make a comment about some of the information out there about the nano filters. The nano coating really helps keep them clean more than anything. There are some manufacturers who will put in their descriptions of their products that it eliminates lens flare. That's just not true from what I've seen. I know Canon has a video on nano coatings and there's different manufacturers, and it's true that they can help reduce some of that, but eliminating them completely, it hasn't happened yet to the best of my knowledge. AR coatings, anti-reflective coatings, can definitely help reduce some of that. But again, remember, your lens is constructed of many elements with many coatings, and putting a filter in front of it is not going to change the properties of the lens. It's a very important consideration when you get it, especially if you're shooting directly into sunlight and you're starting to stack filters. I'm just trying to lower your expectations a little bit. That's something that I deal with a lot. So what I do is I try to get filters that have good color performance, and then I remove the flares in post if I need to. When we're talking about the actual properties of the filters, there's a couple things you should be looking for outside of the materials that they're made of. Something you should always do if you ever purchase any ND filter at all is to test it for its color cast. So when I take a filter like this and I just look at it, you know, it looks gray and that's about it, right? But when you take a picture and you bring it into your photo editing, the vast majority of filters have color cast. They're going to be either blue or maybe green or maybe magenta. And that is one of the most important qualities that you can look for in a filter, because if you're changing the color of the light as it's coming into the camera because you put an ND filter on it, it means you're gonna have more work in post-processing, and it will also screw up certain types of shooting. I know photographers who will take pictures with and without their ND filters, and they blend those together. And so if you're getting strong color cast in one of the images, you can't do it. So the way that you test them is you put your camera on a tripod, take a picture of something pure white with a custom white balance. Put the ND filter in, adjust the shutter speed to make up for the number of stops that you've compensated with the filter, and take the picture again, bring it in to camera raw, compare them side by side. You can even use the color white balance dropper, and that will tell you right away if you're getting any color cast with the filter. And if you are getting color cast, my recommendation would be to return them, because why spend all that money on a high-end filter that isn't doing what it's supposed to do? Another thing that's a big concern is sharpness. You want to make sure that you're using high quality glass. The plastic ones, they're not going to be as sharp, and as they get dirty and get scratches, obviously it's going to reduce your sharpness. Those are the first two things that I look for: sharpness and color cast. And this is why I use the nano coated ones so much. Some of you are probably going to ask about a variable ND. I have one right here. I do not recommend them. This is a great example of how I wasted money. There it is. This is an 82mm thread. Variable ND filters are essentially two polarizers stacked on top of each other. Spent $150 for this thing, and so the idea is that as you rotate it, you make it darker and darker. But the truth of the matter is, this is not a true ND filter. It's two linear polarizers on top of each other. If you want to learn what linear polarizers are, I made a video on YouTube. It explains it. The problem with these is that as you get to darker intensities, so as I'm trying to get darker and darker here, is you start to get a crisscross pattern in the image. Kind of pretty much ruins it. So yeah, $150. I never use it anymore. And it also has color cast. There was a shoot I did with my buddy Sham. We were shooting side by side with the same cameras. He had a standard ND filter. I was using the variable ND filter, and the colors were completely different. So in conclusion, what should you get if you're a pure beginner and you want to start checking out filters? Again, I would recommend get the kit. It's going to have something you can hold them in. It'll have the ring adapters. It'll have the Cokin filter holder. It'll have some generic plastic ND filters. Some of them are the Grad ones. Some of them are full ND filters. Just to start, you'll be able to use those adapters for the rest of your career if you take good care of them. I use the P still all the time. In terms of filters, what I really believe you should start off with is either an ND64, which is a 6-stop filter, or an ND8, which is a 3-stop filter. That's this one here. I kind of prefer the 64 because you can do more with it in terms of slow shutter speeds, shooting video outdoors. They're really great. So I'd recommend that. I would recommend at least something in terms of the Grad ND filters. If you're ever shooting landscapes, This is a 1.2 grad filter, so 4-stop gradient filter. I like the hard edge ones. These two, in terms of ND filters, are a really good place to start. As you get more and more advanced and you know you're going to get into landscape shooting, I would upgrade to the Z Pro size and get the 100 by 100 millimeter filters. But these two right here, master these before you spend a lot of money on anything else. I think a polarizer is also great, and so if you have that Cokin filter, this would probably be a good third edition because you could drop it in there and then use those twos. So these are the three filters: the polarizer, the Grad at 1.2. This is a hard one to find. And then get yourself a nice glass ND64 or an ND8, and you will be happy to know that I have just started my own line of filters because I was so frustrated with the color casting. So these literally just came in. If you guys want to buy these, buy them on my website. They're cheaper than buying them on Amazon. Let me grab one out and show it to you. I'm going to have different sizes and colors and strengths and intensities and all that stuff coming. I mean, literally just got these. So it comes with my logo on it right there. Maven in the corner, ND64. Nano-coated glass. So if you guys are interested in the new Maven filters, I think we're going to call these wraiths or something like ghost filters because there's no color cast on them. They're the best I've seen, and I literally put my word on that. Test them out yourself, see if there's any color cast, and if you're not thrilled, I will refund your money. In any event, that is a quick overview and buyer's guide on ND filters, and I hope you enjoyed it.